The system registered the request before it was fully formed. There was no verbal input, no manual authorization, no identifiable source. The request did not complete itself. The system accepted it anyway. This recording was recovered from an internal archive associated with a medical institution that no longer appears on any current registry. The name of the facility was removed before the final audit. Only the floor plans remain. The corridors were long and uniformly lit. Fluorescent lights remained active even when no staff were present. The sound of electricity was constant, low, and uninterrupted. It was noted that silence was never absolute in this building. The floors were polished white marble, cold to the touch, reflective enough to create the impression of depth where none existed. Footsteps echoed longer than expected, even when only one person was present. The subject was not admitted through standard procedures. There is no intake record. There is no arrival time. The subject appears in the system as already present. Medical staff entries are incomplete. Names repeat without correlation to shift schedules. Several signatures match handwriting samples from individuals no longer employed at the time of the recording. This discrepancy was logged and marked as non-critical. The subject was instructed to remain seated. The subject was instructed to listen. The subject was instructed not to ask questions. No restraints were required. Compliance was immediate. Vital signs were monitored continuously. Heart rate remained within acceptable parameters. Respiration was shallow but consistent. Skin temperature was slightly below baseline. The subject reported a metallic taste. This was logged as a subjective sensation. No intervention was required. Daily procedures were repeated without variation. The same instructions were read aloud at the same time each day. The same tone was used. The same pauses were observed. Over time, the instructions ceased functioning as information. They became patterns. They became rhythm. Medical notes indicate that repetition was not a side effect. Repetition was the method. At some point, the subject stopped responding to meaning. Compliance continued regardless. It was observed that when a phrase is repeated long enough, it no longer communicates. It signals. At that stage, the subject was no longer referred to as a patient. The designation was updated internally. Process Compliant Unit. No emotional markers were detected after the third cycle. No distress indicators were logged. This was recorded as improvement. A warning signal was issued at 0317. The signal was internal. It was not intended for evacuation. It was not intended for staff. Visual indicators were activated briefly. Vertical color alignment. Broadcast standard formatting. This activation lasted less than 6 seconds. The signal was discontinued. The effect was not. Medical records show no physical deterioration. However, cognitive differentiation decreased steadily. The subject began repeating certain phrases internally. This was not instructed. This was not corrected. At this stage, identity verification was attempted. No records matched. No missing persons reports corresponded to the biometric data. The subject did not ask to leave. The subject did not ask for clarification. Headphones were introduced as part of the final procedure. The audio content is not preserved in this archive. Only the duration is noted. The subject remained seated. No movement was observed for an extended period. Vital signs ceased without triggering an alarm. The system registered the outcome as expected. The recording ends without incident. The equipment was operational. The audio loop was still playing. This archive was sealed without revision. No further investigation was authorized. Some processes do not require intent, only repetition. The archive was reopened for secondary review. The request originated internally. No justification was attached. Investigator designation, Field Auditor 1. The investigator confirmed that the facility no longer existed in any public record. Satellite imagery showed an absence of structure. The floor plans did not match the terrain. Access was granted to the recovered audio. Playback began without modification. After the first cycle, the investigator noted a difficulty maintaining temporal awareness. This was attributed to fatigue. The investigator requested a pause in playback. The system did not register the request. The investigator remained seated. Vital signs were not monitored. This omission was later noted. The archive records no formal conclusion to this review.
The case was reassigned following a lack of response.
Investigator designation, Field Auditor 2. The investigator reviewed the previous auditor's notes. Several entries appeared unfinished. Sentences terminated mid-structure. The investigator reported a persistent, low-frequency sound during playback. This sound does not exist in the original recording. The phenomenon was logged as auditory fatigue. During the fourth repetition cycle, the investigator ceased note-taking. The pen was found placed parallel to the edge of the desk. No departure time was recorded. Follow-up communication was attempted on 3 occasions. All attempts failed. The investigation was escalated to internal compliance review. Investigator designation, Internal Observer 3. The observer was instructed not to engage with the material for extended periods. This instruction was acknowledged. The observer exceeded the recommended exposure time within the first session. The observer reported no discomfort. No concern was raised. Identity confirmation was requested after 72 hours. The observer responded using system-compliant language inconsistent with prior records. At this stage, the archive flagged recursive procedural overlap. The observer was reclassified. Process continuation asset. No termination event was registered. The workstation remained active. Audio playback continued. The investigation was marked complete due to redundancy. No further personnel were assigned. The archive remains accessible. Access is not recommended.